I'm here at the 2024 Moon Lake Gathering, which, man, there is a lot of great stories out here. You just got to meet and mingle, talk to people. And I got a guy here who does not want to be on camera for certain reasons, but he's got some great stories to tell. And with that said, I'm not even going to say your name. Just hit it. Take it away.
All right. Well, I probably bought the first Rhodes book when I was living in Vernal in 1979, and it really put the hook to me. So I started looking for it, and I became acquainted and friends with George Thompson. I used to go over to his house, and I started studying it, and then I worked for the tribe for a while, about a year, and a lot of the tribal members shared things with me that they wouldn't share with other people. And in my progression, I started out on Mosby looking for the Lost Rhodes mines, because I knew that the theory and the sayings, and everybody said Carre-Shinob's up there. So I really didn't want to go there to Carre-Shinob, even though it had been pointed out to me where it was. But I went up on Mosby and I found some pretty exciting things. In Mosby Park, when I first went there in about 1984, there was a mine there that had a two-story structure on it and had a steel door, and you could reach inside there and reach and feel it. And I looked it up later on, and it was called Money Rock Number 2. And the owners of it, I don't remember the gentleman's name in Roosevelt, but everybody knows Gale Rhodes, and he was one of the other participants, and you can look it up. And it's still there, although the Forest Service has removed the steel door off of it and bulldozed the tailings pile up into it. And somebody within the last 4 or 5 years has dug out, and you can go back in there. And I would estimate the tailings pile to be about 20 or 30 yards long and probably 12 or 14 feet high. So they did a lot of work to get in there. And Dale in his book wrote about the sighting hole that sights to the mine, and I don't know if I should mention their names, like Randy Lewis. He said it was a sighting hole, but my opinion differs from theirs, because I think it was a placement for a mountain howitzer, because the strategic value of that hole, you can see both entrances to where that steel door mine was. And that's one of the many things, and it's close to Ice Cave Peak, but it is in Mosby Park. And as I was exploring the Ice Cave Peak region, a friend of mine told me that his dog fell in from the ice pile and came out another hole. So my opinion is the ice cave has potential of being either a storage for the Spaniards or a potential mine. And it seemed like every time I would go up there, a group of Indians would show up and just chit-chat or whatever down from where I was. And I never did anything other than go into the ice cave and then leave. And a man named Ray Goodrich, who's passed away now, had a garage in Tridell, told me that he ran a sawmill up there many, many decades ago and found a pyrite outcropping. And I asked him to tell me where it was. He wouldn't. But it was in the, if you head towards Paradise, there's a pond there called Mill Pond, and that's where the sawmill was. So somewhere geographically in that area, I was never able to pinpoint it. But that's some of the start of it. And then I started progressing over into Rock Creek when I worked for the Upper Stillwater Dam and worked for Caterpillar, and I'd always get over there and I'd get a chance to explore around the Rock Creek area. And last year, after the fire, may have been 2 years ago, my memory's not that good, I was prospecting up the creek that comes out of Miners Gulch there, dragging a hand sluice, metal detector, pan, and several bottles of water. To my chagrin, crawling over deadfall, and as you can imagine, as the day progressed and the higher that I got, the more exhausted I became. So I went up the hillside, and it was about like climbing up loose bentonite or sand, and I had to stab it with my hand pick and drag this other stuff behind me. And when I got up to the top, there was a formation up there that I saw a well-defined square hole in there. And it would have taken something to get up to that hole. It was about 10 foot above where I was standing, and at the time it was getting dark. I mean, I'm sure I could walk right back to it now, because it's in the rock. It's in that formation of rock there. And I left it, came back, and went down, and was never able in the past couple of years to get back there. So it's been either a year or two. But I'm quite sure that that's a mine opening facing to the west, because the sun was shining in it when I came up there, and I hiked my way all the way back down. But I've seen some interesting things, and another gentleman named Rabbit Maxwell that just passed away.
Did he just pass away?
He passed away about 6 months ago.
I wanted to interview him.
I used to spend some time in Rabbit's house, and he showed me many things that he had. And Treasure Hill, according to Rabbit, now this is his story, he was mining in there for the Indians to move those gold bars. And he never got broke through into there because they found the other entrance. And he says they've changed the gold bars from Treasure Hill. That was from his mouth to my ears.
Huh?
And the Indians told him if he had one of the Indians, I'm sure was a friend of his, said if you had broken through there, it would have been the last thing you ever saw.
Huh?
That we weren't planning on letting you leave alive if you saw the treasure.
Really?
And that's what he told me. And I spent several hours in his living room in Hannah, and he's gone to the great afterlife now. So
yeah, I wanted to talk to him. So you was telling me that they shot at you?
Well, unfortunately, I couldn't resist it was pointed out to me where Carre-Shinob was. And when they pointed up on the mountain, another guy, and I won't mention his name because he's a Native American, he may still be alive. He invited me hunting, and he said, would you like to go hunting with me, deer hunting? And I said, well, it's not season. He said, we can kill it any time of the year. So he blessed himself with some sagebrush, and I said, does that work? And he blessed me with it. And I think it was more, I mean, I'm not a Native American religious person or whatever, but I think it was more to get the smell off of you, because we walked so close to some deer, and I asked him if he wanted me to shoot one. He said, no. I said, if you want one, take one. And I didn't. And behind him was a well-defined mine. And I asked him, I said, what's up with that mine? And he said, repeated back to me, what mine? And I said it a couple of times. He said, I don't see anything. But it was definitely, and I found out later that it belonged to the Murrays. And I don't know whether it was Chunky Murray or, you know, any of them. He was related to the Murrays, but his last name wasn't Murray. And then he pointed out to me where it was, and he said, it's sacred ground, don't go up there. And it was above this mine that they were mining in the White Rocks area. I'm not going to tell exactly where it is, but because they asked me not to. But, you know, greed or whatever you want to call it got the better of me, and I had my wife let me out right at dusk, and I spent the night on the mountain searching for it. The next day, I was walking around the mountain, and I heard a bullet go past my head, and I've been in the military, so I know what they sound like. They go, pew! Then I heard the report of the rifle, and I dropped to the ground trembling like a wet dish rag, and I came up with my rifle and scope and was trying to get his position. I've been trained in different parts of the military, and he wouldn't fire another shot or wouldn't move that I could see, and I thought, you're making a big target by coming up above this log. So I laid down there for probably a couple hours wondering what my next move would be. Anyway, I left there when it started getting dark, and I was living in La Pointe, and I walked all the way down the mountain that night. It took me all night to get back down, and being terrified that he may be waiting for me. And I didn't really find Shinob, but I knew I was really close. And I saw some stone things that were around there. It looked like a table. It looked like that was well manufactured by ancient civilizations. Be that as it may, I'm probably pretty glad that I could be here now. If I had found it, I probably wouldn't. About 2 months later, I was up in the Hilltop Bar Cafe above Fort Duchesne there, and I'd ordered a beer. It was 2:30 in the day, and there really wasn't anybody in there. And there was two Native Americans over there, a man and a woman, in the corner. They were obviously drunk and making out or doing whatever, and the bartender and me. And I ordered a beer, and about 20 minutes later, this Indian came in, and he was wearing a cowboy hat. And I turned to him and said, pretty hot out there, isn't it? He never answered me. He didn't say a word. He just looked straight forward. And I said, you don't talk to people when they speak to you? Not a word. About 10 minutes later, after the bartender came out, or it wasn't even 10 minutes, a few minutes later, the bartender came out and he said, give me a Budweiser, and he set him up a bottle of beer, and he never touched it. He paid the bartender, and the bartender went back in the back, and he turned to me, stone cold, looked me in the eyes and said, don't go up there again. You've been warned. If you go up there again, you'll just be one more dead white man on the mountain. If you weren't so loved on this reservation, you would be a dead man today. And he left. And it still kind of gives me, fear thinking about that, because I never went back up there. I've had people ask me, will you point it out? And I said, I can point you the general direction, but I would really advise you not going up there, because I still believe to this day they watch that area. And I asked tribal members about it, and they said, it's our sacred ground, and white men would abuse it and destroy it, and we're not going to allow that. And I was in the military at the time, and they pressed me about going up there, and then they actually, I don't know how to say other than detained me, and I went back to, because I saw when I was up there, this part of the story I kind of left out, there was a deuce and a half, which is an Army 6x6, pulling a tanker behind it, which would be water. And I thought, it's kind of, I don't want to make this sound like a Rambo story or anything, because I'm not that guy, but that night, before I went back to the point, other than the shot firing at me, a ranger team came up the mountain in a modified wedge formation, because I know what they sound like being trained, giving signals to each other. And when I was detained and sent back east, they said that the gold in Utah, as well as the gold in a lot of places in America, is part of our national treasure.
Really?
And it's easy to do a flyover with a satellite. And while I was being detained, I was in the latrine going to the bathroom, and a guy walked in, and he had safety glasses on, or band around his head, because that's part of a fighting technique that I tend to do, is stab you in your eyes, because it's just whatever. And he crossed his arms and asked me if I wanted to mess with the marble bull. And I said, I got nothing against DC. I don't know what you guys have against me. He said, you think you're here out of your own free will? You were up on that mountain that night. I could have shot you. I had you in my sights. And they ordered me and said, do not fire. I say again, do not fire. And I came down off the mountain, was shipped from Utah back to Virginia. That's where I'm originally from. My father and mother are buried in Arlington National. I got military in my family all over. And this guy told me that he could have shot me. And I was pretty arrogant young then. I called him, and I won't say chicken ass. Why didn't you? My troubles would be over. And he said he followed orders. He clenched his fist and screamed at me and went out of the room. And I followed him, and I saw him go to a payphone and pick up the phone and said, yes, sir, he got the message loud and clear. I think he understands now. And hung the phone up. And I stayed there for about 3 months, under detention. And a man came in and he said, and I had met several other people that told me that just leave it alone. And who do you think you are? Indiana Jones? And one guy handed me a copy of the Book of Mormon. And when I pulled his card out of there, it said, Office of the Attorney General in the Pentagon. And he said, you'll have no more trouble with this. And I kept that card for many years, because I thought, this is my get out of jail free card, and I put it back in there. And when they released me and I discharged and got my DD-214 from the military, I said, that's it. And I haven't gone back up there since. I've gone on Mosby, but I won't go on that part of the mountain at all.
So Matt, let me see if I get this right. You're telling me the military is guarding that? Is that what you're saying?
The Indians guard it, but they don't have, if they have trouble,
they call in backup.
All they have to do, there's a lot of them that are in the military, and they're very, very, they consider the military sacred. I don't know how the pieces fit together. If I knew, I could tell you exactly how that puzzle worked. But being detained, pulled out of my house, and taken away against my free will, and being told that, military. I'm just, yes.
Wow.
If they were not guarding it, why would they tell me that?
Yeah.
You were in the military at the time.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't have any choice.
You were under orders.
You follow orders or you go to jail, that's it. Yeah, I won't mention the 2 branches that I've been in, but, well, I could. It's Army, Air Force. I've been in both of them. And that's just the way it happened to me. And
What mountain was that?
That was up on Mosby Mountain. They knew with my training that had they shown themselves, I didn't even think about firing back, because I stood up on that mountain as I knew they were. I've been trained in how their teams move. I laid my rifle down because I thought, if I stand up with it in my hand, they're going to kill you. I picked up a rock and threw it down at them and screamed at them, come up and kill one of your own. Go ahead.
So you knew they was military?
I knew they were. I knew.
So it was more than just one person you knew?
There was a 7-man team.
Huh.
Because I know what they move like. I know how they move. I know what they do. And there was 2 helicopters in the air triangulating my position.
Really?
They actually gave me an award for E&E, escape and evasion.
Really?
Yes. Stood me up before them and handed me an award. I was really confused then. I mean, but that's our military. I mean, what can I say? This is a true story, my hand to God. I mean, that's what happened to me. So.
What were you doing? Sorry, I got in at the last of it.
You got anything you want to ask him?
What were you doing up there to get the first of the story?
Looking for Carre-Shinob, and it had been pointed out to me by the natives, the area that it was, and it wasn't a, oh, here it is. It was like it's up there. And
But you had a rifle with you.
yeah, I wasn't going to go up there unarmed. You know.
Why do you think the Indian took you up there to go hunting? What you did?
We were friends, and I had worked at the tribe, you know, and they had I had ingratiated myself to them and them to me. And he wasn't, you know, it wasn't like he took me to Carre-Shinob. I'll make that perfectly clear. I've never seen it. I don't know where it is. I know about where it is, but it can stay there as far as I'm concerned. You know, I'm semi-retired now. I'd like to live out the rest of my life in peace. And I don't think that anybody going up there, and I asked a couple tribal members, what's the problem with people getting this gold and producing it? They said, well, they don't want the interference from white people, and they've seen gold mines the way it is, and it ruins the water, it ruins the fish. You know, if you get a bunch of people in there and a big production, it'll destroy the land. And the other thing is, it's ours. And I said, well, why would you care if somebody else helped you mine it or that? He said, well, why wouldn't you do it now? And they said, well, we've got oil. Maybe when the oil runs out, we'll start producing the gold, but we're not going to do it now.
Do you think where they were watching, is that tribal land?
It's absolutely tribal land. There's no doubt. I had trespassed.
I spent a lot of time in it.
Well, if you go up the Mosby, you go up that Mosby Road, there's a smelter, and it's there, and they don't care if you look at it. As soon as you pass the Little Water Hills, yes, and there's a red mountain right next to it. I saw it when it was semicircle. Now it's been pretty much destroyed. I had pictures of it, and everything on that side of the road, and until you cross the tribal treaty boundary road, is Indian land on the would be the west side. It's Little Water, yeah, Little Water Hills. Yes.
So with that said, man, I appreciate you telling your story.
Well, let me say one more. One more thing.
Okay.
There is a mine there, and a couple guys have put it in your films and that on the Indian Treaty Boundary Road. And I was shown that by an Indian too, and went back in there, and they don't really get mad as long as you aren't digging in it or anything. And it goes back probably about 20 yards. You probably know where I'm talking about. Well, I went over the hill because I go a lot by feelings, and I saw this other hole in the ground. And being young, naive, and stupid, I started pressing myself in between caved-in rocks, not knowing that I could push one and be the end. And I found the paperwork outside of it, and it said Nick shot load number 2, Nick Stevenson and Phil Brotherson. Brotherson's store has been closed in Fort McShane for years, and Nick Stevenson had his company up here in Altamont. So that's another mine that I found. I can tell you about 20 or 30 others that I found. But
so, man, I got to get set up for this, so I appreciate you sharing my story, but that's one reason why you come to the Moonlight Gathering, and this is 2024, because you never know what stories you hear. You guys got to hear a great story, man, and thank you for sharing.
No problem, thank you.
And that's a wrap.